we have a panel this morning to discuss their theories and their ideas of the code of conduct. So the individuals I invited on the panel, please come forward.
The code of conduct was started a number of years ago. It's been in the training of the judges classes. We emphasize it, and in a number of places and some sanctioning bodies, they have their officials read it and sign it and turn it in each year. It has been revised through the years. A couple of years ago it was changed and made it a little softer, and then Mike, I believe, made it a little bit more forceful, which is a good thing. I would imagine all of you have copies there in front of you. I think that social media is going to be addressed by a number of people here. You would be shocked and amazed by the number of officials that are putting their photographs and comments on social media with respect to fights that they have done. I was working a fight a couple of weeks ago, and the day before the fight, up on the internet was a photograph of this official with the world champion stating he's with the iconic champion so-and-so, and I'll be working his fight. There is really flagrant ways of officials violating the code of ethics. Now, a lot of people I know on this panel will be talking about social media. I would refer you to number 9 that I would like to see broadened. It said, no official shall engage in any conduct that will discredit the sport of unarmed combat. No official shall engage in any conduct that will discredit the sport of unarmed combat. In our training classes, we throw up slides which says, if you have any criminal charges filed against you or domestic charges filed against you, that official should step down from his responsibilities until those charges are taken care of. With this, I believe that some officials have filed suit against commissioners, against executive directors, and put them in a precarious position. I therefore would like to see number 9 broadened to have the words put in that should a licensed official file litigation against a commission member, executive director, or any other licensee, that they must withdraw from officiating until that litigation is over. Thank you.
Kevin McDonald, referee. I've been teaching the referee and judge classes for a number of years now, and one of the things that's come up, we've started to have to address Twitter and social media and stuff like that, and I think a lot of things can be solved being proactive, especially as you roll this stuff out with your officials. What we think is common sense, where someone shouldn't post pictures or things like that, if you have your officials looking out for each other, because sometimes you never know who in the back room snaps a picture and then throws it out. It happened just the other night to me. Somebody had snapped a picture while I was doing a rules meeting, because it was a group rules thing, and they threw it up, and then I immediately got a message from someone else with a screenshot, and thankfully I was able to just go over to the individual and be like, hey, look, man, not for nothing, could you pull that picture down? Like, it looks very unprofessional. Should something happen, and they were very gracious about it, and yeah, absolutely. But I think sometimes people kind of stumble down these holes, and especially when newer officials get appointed their first couple of times to bigger events, and then they see celebrities or and they kind of get caught up in it. And I think it's a good opportunity for commissioners and other senior officials to kind of make sure that doesn't happen. And if they start to see it happening, it's something that I think can be prevented before it becomes a problem, and that's a great way to do it rather than just going straight to discipline after it already is a problem. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Turn things over to Andy.
I think that this whole issue, I don't see the upside in the social media for officials. I don't have that stuff, but I really don't see the upside in it. I think what a lot of these guys are doing is posting this stuff on there so they can make them people they went to high school with jealous. I swear, I think that's all it is. I think they're trying to look cool, and they're using the events that our bodies regulate and the promoters who put on these events and the athletes to look cool. I think that's about what it is. So that's some of it. I think the other part of it is, and this kind of goes with social media, because I got me one this morning. Not going to name the official. I'm going to show it to Lee here in a little while. This morning, we had a licensed official knocking another licensed official on the Facebook or the whatever. Worked for the same commission this morning. You couldn't have timed this talk better. I think some of it has to do with the green monster. And that's what I talk about, is the officials are jealous of each other. Now, you know, we like these guys. And I know you guys like these guys and I like these guys. Let's not be confused. I'm not naive. These guys ain't my friends. We're their boss. We assign them. They're real nice to us. And they'll write nice things about us on social media or whatever. But they'll slice their other officials' throat to get the assignment. That's what it seems like sometimes. And you have to be careful, because on social media they'll go on and kind of, it's almost like a campaign, and you know, you got to be careful, because they can write whatever they want to. They have freedom of expression, write whatever they want to. I don't have to assign them. So there's a kind of a balance between, I think there has to be some kind of balance, but I think all these things are kind of intertwined together. I don't think it's one or the other. I don't see the upside in social media in general for an official. I don't see the upside in that. I think they should probably, like, let me tell you something. Sal D'Amato has more fights than anybody in the country, okay? You want to make Sal great? He comes to my shows, he sits down, and I don't know if I've heard Sal talk more than about 3 sentences in my life. He turns in good scores, and then I don't see him anymore. I'm not knocking Sal. It's great. That's what you want. But you guys know those officials who call you every 3 days, just letting you know I'm available for that assignment. Just letting you know. Thank you for that information. I appreciate that. I have an arbiter system we pay a lot of money for that shows me you're available. So what I would suggest is that we need a training for the next training course, and the title of it is How to Be Sal and Derek, or how to be these guys that don't talk, because that's what I'm looking for. I know that's what you guys are looking for, because you guys do my job. He's a good judge. He studies. But he don't get involved in the politics. He sits there. He does his job. When he's asked to be on a panel, look, he's up here. When he's asked to participate in judging the rules thing, he's on every call. That's what you're looking for. But I think this social media stuff and the code of ethics, all these things are intertwined together. I don't think they're independent issues. I can't tell my official. Let me tell you a little story. I'm going to tell the Hugh Min story. He won't care. He won't care. We love Hugh. Anybody know Hugh? We all love Hugh. Hugh's a good judge, okay? And I've used him many times. World title, very high caliber judge. We put him on the other one. But this was like, was it 2 weeks ago? We had a title fight in California 2 weeks ago. And to his credit, he's the one that brought it up. But he took a picture with the coach of one of the competitors like 3 weeks ago and posted it on the Facebook. What am I supposed to do with that? I'm getting all these calls now. I mean, he called first, but then I'm starting. So I moved him to the other title fight. Okay, because I had 2, luckily. But what if I hadn't had 2? His plane ticket's bought. He's coming. So, and that fight was I'm not saying it's the biggest paying fight ever, but I mean, it was maybe $2,000. I don't know. It was, you wouldn't want to lose that fight, I wouldn't think, if you was an official. So just be careful what you post. I'll give you a Robert Diaz story. Everybody knows Robert, Golden Boy's matchmaker. They brought a judge from Texas in. I forgot who it was, but they took a picture in the Golden Boy offices with Texas. 3 years later, Lee has this huge fight. I believe it was at the stadium out there. And they calling over there to Texas. We protest. Look at this picture. 3 years later, they found it on Facebook somehow or another. If you post it on the internet, it's there forever. So, look, I just tell my officials, you can do whatever you want. I don't have to use you anymore. You can do whatever you want. But just don't forget, all these guys you hear from, they're trying to knock the guy at the top of the pyramid off. That's what they're doing. I'm not confused. I know what they're doing. Played their game. And, right now, Sal's at the top of the pyramid. John and Herb. John, maybe not John anymore. Herb, certainly. One of the best referees. Is these people, look, I'll just leave it with that, is that just tell your officials, I don't see the upside in it. They can do whatever they want to. I don't see any upside in social media for an official.
Yeah, go ahead. First of all, thank you for the kind words, Andy. Andy kind of stole my thunder a little bit because I was going to mention social media as well, and really, use common sense as an official. We know about not taking pictures with fighters or at cage side, things like that. But also, nowadays with all the technology and all the social media, stay off of it. I got to tell you, my family constantly tells me, "Why are you not on Facebook, Twitter? We're all on it." I'm just not. I have family in Italy. I use WhatsApp with them or a phone call. I stay off of it because it's too tempting. It would be too tempting. So I'm totally off of all social media. And, criticizing officials and things like that. I mean, I've had other judges, this morning Andy mentioned said, there's an official criticizing another official. Use common sense. Everybody sees it. I mean, it's not something that we're talking face to face and we can discuss it and then that's it. I mean, it's out there. Once you press send, I think that's how it works with social media. You press send, it's gone, and everybody sees it. Use common sense.
How's everybody doing? My name is Brian Miner. I'm from Connecticut. I'm an official. I'm not as famous as Kevin or Sal or Jaron back there, who somehow got out of doing this. All right. But official is just one of my other jobs. My main job is I'm the director of slots at Mohegan Sun. And you guys heard about sports betting, right? So it's coming. It's coming to every state. I think this code of conduct is something that you should definitely have your officials sign. We see that people make bets right now and all kinds of things, whether it's legal or not. So it's just something that you need to think of. I've already signed it with Mohegan. I work with Mike all the time. I've already signed it with New York also. So just take a look at it. I think it's something good with everything else that all these guys have said.
So Mike asked me to make a comment from the medical standpoint, and as you well know, every year, something bad happens in the sport, and there are, legal ramifications, and I'm involved in many of them as an expert. And what I will tell you is, from an official standpoint, when you make comments about anything to do with the medical aspect of what happened and about, even if nobody was seriously injured, it is used in a court of law. So they will go through all the media and they will find, and then they'll contact me, and I have to do damage control. Dr. Schwartz, the ref said that this happened. Can you comment on that? And of course, I try not to. But because I have to do damage control, sometimes I have to say, it all looked fine to me, and I have to protect our commission and protect commissions around the country. So from an official standpoint, do not comment, good, bad, or ugly, about what might have transpired in the fight itself. Leave that up to the commission and leave that up to the ringside physicians, because it will come back to haunt all of us one day.
Thanks. Just one other thing I wanted to add. As I see a lot of the next generation of officials coming up, it's great if we can keep them off, but the whole next generation, I'm a big Facebook guy. I try to make sure I never comment about fights or any of that kind of stuff. I'm also on the fire department, so I know that, I got to always watch what I post and things like that, and I try to keep the fight stuff completely separate. But we have a whole generation of people, and they're going to be the officials, because it's the fighters that are going, and they've grown up and they've lived on this stuff. And like Andy said, when you've got pictures from years ago, those pictures are out there forever. And one of the things I always try to tell newer officials is, if there's any chance that someone could make the case there's a conflict of interest, bring that straight to your commissioner. Bring that before someone else does. And your commissioner may decide, hey, you know what, it was 3 years ago, or it was whatever, like, I know this, I'll deal with it. They may decide to, go ahead and have the judge swap out for you on that bout, or the referee swap out. But a lot of the younger folks, they're kind of intimidated, and they feel that if they come to you and say, like, well, I used to train with this guy, or I used to that's going to kind of be a ding down on them. And I think if you let them know a little more proactively, like, hey, bring it to us first. It's always great if you bring it to us first rather than we find out later, and really kind of foster an attitude like that. I think it will hopefully prevent some things down the road. So I want to let you know.
Just one other thing, and I kind of wanted to point it out, but many times I receive phone calls to recommend officials or checking an official out and so forth. I want you to know that there's many promoters now that have a social media person scanning the internet. I can recall just weeks ago that we went through 11 officials and they were rejected by the promoter because they were checking information that was posted on social media. Now, it's a time that we need to get serious about this. I've always equated, when I was judging, I always tried to think in the terms, if I was a NFL official, or if I was a Major Baseball League umpire, or the NBA, and they have codes of ethics, how long do you think an official would last in the NFL if they posted a picture of them at the Super Bowl saying, I'll be doing the game tomorrow? I heard Mark Ratner talk on this at a North American Boxing Federation convention a couple of years ago. Mark has communicated with the Major League sports. And so, Mark, why don't you come up and just give us a little bit more of your knowledge? Come on.
Thanks, Dwayne. This is a subject dear to my heart. But Andy brought up something. We have a lot of fights that are in other countries, and it's amazing how many officials call me and say, I got my passport, I got my visa, I'm available. So I cross them right off. You brought up a good example about an official that had a picture with somebody and you didn't know what to do with them, really. This happened to us. This is a long time ago. One of our officials had a picture taken with Oscar De La Hoya, a very famous referee. We got it before the fight and took him out of the fight. It was like a $5,000 fight. He's probably still mad at me, but you can't do it. But what Dwayne brought up was, and I'm meeting with these people actually tomorrow. They have unions, so it's a little bit different. All our officials are independent contractors. And I refereed NCAA Division I football for 20 years. That's part of the deal. If you want to referee, you can't say a word. The NFL will kick you right out. You can't do it. That's in their code of conduct. That's a union rule by their union. I had a referee recently in MMA, thought he was just helping the sport, and he got the assignments, and he put it on Facebook, the assignments for each individual fight. Now, what you don't know is that people bet on fights, or you should know that, but that's knowledge that nobody should have. Now, and if you have an open meeting law where we pick officials for title fights, that's one thing. But to put every fight out there, he didn't think it was, he never even thought about it. He was just helping the fights. You can't do that. That doesn't make sense. I have other officials who, they're so happy, and this is not guys who travel with us, but they put their credential on Facebook to prove that they're there. Well, Facebook people or people who watch it are so smart, they'll take a screenshot and make a copy of the credential and change the name somehow and try to get in these fights. So it's just little small things that are that happen that just don't you just don't think about it. So I know that these guys are independent contractors, but as it's been said, you can tell them not to do it, and it's up to them if they want to do it, but you don't have to assign them. Judging and refereeing is a privilege. It's not a right. And I think that's really what happens. So that's my little soapbox, but I feel very passionate about it. I've talked to some of the people, some of my officials here already in the last few weeks. I don't want officials wearing a shirt with the promoter's name on it around. I've seen that. It's just common sense, like you said. So thanks.
Well, we'd like to open it up if there's any questions or situations that you might have. Anybody, if you'd stand, we'll get a microphone to you. And you guys answer.
Hi. So I did it. I took a picture with the fighter. So I was confirmed in February. We were sworn in March. And I think I took a picture 2 weeks later because I didn't know. It wasn't until I came to Mark's new orientation class that I learned that I wasn't supposed to do that. So I just think it would be beneficial if people were told that early on when they initially become officials or commissioners, because I didn't know. And when I found out after I took his class, I took it down. Sorry.
One comment and one request. The comment is, at least in the combat sports in particular, just start with the assumption that everybody's paranoid and that very innocent things can get misconstrued. But the question and the request is for next year, and I've been meaning to ask this for now several years, the standards have to be different because when you're overseas, a lot of American officials get appointed, Dwayne being a pretty good example, back when he was a judge, get appointed to events overseas. There can never be a conflict of interest, but there are certain things that occur overseas that have to, well, I'll give an example. And Dwayne, if I could use you as an example.
I didn't do it.
Yes, you did. Dwayne and I have known each other for in excess of 30 years, mostly in a very friendly capacity. Dwayne, before he retired as a judge, was very much considered one of the very top judges in the world. And it was often assigned overseas. Overseas, if you get a judge that's assigned overseas or a referee, there's an official dinner where all the officials, and I'm looking over at Lindsay Tucker, who's nodding vigorously, all the officials are invited. They, of necessity, are to some degree socializing with the promoters. Now, any reputable promoter will have both sides there. It won't be one side versus another. Going back to one of the things I wanted to just ask you to consider for next year, because this makes officials who are going over for the first time very awkward. I've noticed it with a couple of very good officials. They really feel compelled to attend these. That's what it's for. But also, if you're in the same hotel for 3 or 4 days in a foreign country, you're brushing up against the officials. It's just the way it is. And if I'm brushing up with a Dwayne Ford, there's very good possibility that at some point I'm going to say, Dwayne, what are you doing for dinner? Now, what I do, and I have done, is because Dwayne's so well known, somebody from both sides knows Dwayne. So, I've gone out with Dwayne overseas, but somebody from the other side has also come with me, and we've split the bill, 3 ways. So it's a different milieu, and just in terms of training your officials, the officials that are going over there really have to be trained. They're American officials, they're well respected, and they need to know what to expect when they go over. So if you could sort of look at that for next year, or as one of the officials' trainings. That's it.
This is a situation where sometimes the official is not even aware of the cultures of a country. For example, if you go into Japan, the highest integrity and honor the Japanese people, they would not do anything dishonest with you. So you have to understand that the official needs to learn a little bit about the culture and what's proper and what's not. But I've learned through the years that perception is reality. So that's something an official has to be careful of. Is there any other questions?
I have a question. Morning. So my question is from the side of somebody who is an inspector or deputy commissioner for a commission, and a photo gets taken without their knowledge of them with a fighter, and that is posted on social media. What would you recommend the person to do if that comes up in a commission meeting further on down the road?
Just as another official, and commissioners may, feel differently, but I'll speak to it from the official side. And like I said, we get pictures taken all the time with our knowing, without. We get memes made of us. We get all kinds of Photoshops and doctors and all kinds of things. And but at the end of the day, every time I've seen a picture pop up that I'm like, oh, like if it makes me look silly or whatever, so be it. But if it's something that could, I've always gone to the person who I saw that first posted it and just been like, hey, that might get me kind of jammed up. I know what you were doing, but would it? 100%, I've always had them pull it down. That's cool. If in the commission role, part of you being in that locker room, if phones are out and pictures are being taken, like it's a part of the game. And if you see something like that pop up, that's one of those things I would let your folks from the commission know, and just say like, hey, look, even send it to them. Hey, this was flowing around online. I saw this. Just because again, they're the one. Your job is to watch that fighter in the back and take care of that end. So if something else pops up, let them know. Let the folks know who hired you.
At the end of the day, too, and actually, Corey, you're next, but at the end of the day, if I'm looking at that and you didn't post it, hey, listen, people post things about me all the time, which aren't true, but I mean, it happens. So as long as you're not posting it, to me, it's not a big deal. Now, if that commission feels it is, then they have no idea what social media is all about, because halftime.
I just wanted to add an extra comment on that. If you didn't post it, most commissions...
If the inspector or the deputy commissioner did not post it, most commissions aren't going to have an issue with it. But what I want to caution you about is don't comment on it. Don't say, hey, dude, yeah, that's me. Don't say a word, leave it alone. You know, like Kevin said, you can reach out to whoever posted it and say, dude, you know, that, can you please try to take that down? And if you can't, just don't comment on it. And that's because I think that that's where, once you acknowledge that, and then once you use that to promote yourself, it's about self-promotion and self-interest. As soon as you involve yourself in that type of activity, that's when we have an issue. Because the one thing that we all have to remember as regulators, as inspectors, as deputy commissioners, and as everybody, it's not about us. And the second you make it about you, that's where the issue comes in.
And that's a great statement, Kim. If somebody else posts it, it's not your worries. If it's offensive, then you can. You know, I think that there's something, social media and the internet and so forth is something we have to learn to live with. However, a lot of our officials are racing to social media to find somebody who agreed with their score. And I've always felt that if somebody has to race to social media to get their score confirmed, they don't have a lot of confidence in themselves. Some officials know everything about a fighter from social media. Now, there's some things that officials need to know about fighters, but I think some officials stay too long on social media. Let me tell you a personal story and then I'll shut up. When I retired from judging, I walked into a press room in a big fight, and there was Dan Raphael, and he was talking to a friend of mine. So I walked up and shook my friend's hand, and Dan Raphael reached his hand out and said, "You probably don't want to talk to me." And I said, "Why?" And Dan says, "Because of all the bad articles I wrote on you." And I said, "Dan, I'm sorry. I never read one of your articles." So there was a ton written out there, I'm sure, but I never read it. I never opened up the newspapers because I wanted to go into the fight pure. I didn't want to know that this fighter was born on a dirt floor, and if he wins the fight, he's going to buy his mother a house, because my heart wants his mother to have a house. So I think that what you could caution your officials is to stay the heck off of social media on boxing. If they don't have the confidence to turn their scorecard in and know if they did a good job, then they're not going to get better. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm going to Dr. Schwartz because I had an issue. As a doctor in the corner of a fighter, the kid gets hurt, he's cut, he went to go see my physician. And the physician put a couple stitches in him, you know, hey, I'm going to do it, and they didn't do it pro bono, it wasn't anything big. And the kid came back to that doctor to take him out. But then that kid became that doctor's patient. He came to see him for his ankle, he came to see him for his wrist. That's when it becomes a little more of a conflict now, and I need to know that, because I felt uncomfortable assigning that doctor to that kid's corner or to that kid's camp. And there's that fine line between treating the fighter maybe one time to take some stitches out, but if you treat that fighter continuously and he's your patient, I think doctors got to disclose that to the commission.
I think that the only time that should happen is under the direction of the commission. So, for example, some fighters might be sent to me because they can't get a physical, but I am asked by the commission to do that physical. So they're not my patient, but we're trying to facilitate to make it easier for everybody.
But if he becomes your patient,
That's a conflict of interest, and at the very least, put him in the other corner, her in the other corner, because then it's reality. Perception is reality. The one thing I would say also about the stitching thing, and again, I'm throwing this out, we don't do it in Connecticut. And there's a couple of reasons we don't. Obviously, we're at the fight, kind of working with at the actual event, and don't necessarily have the time to do it. But there's a liability aspect to it. It's real important. If that is not done properly, and the next fight is the kid's fight to become, a champion, and he's gonna, perhaps make $10 million, and that cut opens, and the fight is stopped, he could come back after the commission and the doctors say it wasn't done right. And so you're opening yourself up to liability. So I'd be real careful. I know a lot of commissions do it. It makes it easier for the fighters, but I want you to at least consider that there is perhaps a little bit of liability if you choose to do that.
Yes, first, 100% support of a code of conduct for officials, absolutely needed, and I think will really help to contribute to advancing the sport. To Kevin McDonald's point regarding a potential conflict of interest, and to point 11 on the document, which says that basically a fighter who perceives even a minimal conflict of interest should relinquish the assignment, should not accept the assignment. The way you described it seems to work better because someone's perception on a conflict of interest may vary based on the character of the official. One official, hey, I had dinner with him last night, so how will that affect my judging? That's not a conflict. Another would say, hey, well, he was in my third grade class, that's a conflict of interest. So what you were saying is, no, listen, any potential conflict of interest, you report it to the commission, let the commission make the decision. Sometimes, I've worked helping commissions launch their MMA programs in small markets. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody trained with everybody before the sport launched. So, I'm a little concerned about 11, where it's putting the onus on the official to say there's a minor conflict, even a minor conflict, so I'm going to say no. I think it's a better policy and could be more evenly administered by any potential conflict. You report it to the commission, you let the commission make the decision.
I can address that. That, absolutely. So a fine example is Kevin McDonald works for me, and he's a fairly decent referee in MMA. A little below average, but he's okay. But with that said, the first question I do, and these guys know it, so they automatically, Brian Miner and Sal, they know that I send out the officials list, and they're on it, and they look at the fight card. They don't know what they're refereeing or judging at this point, but they call me up, and Eric Cologne, who owns a gym down in Jersey, hey, Mike, bang, 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 are my guys. I rolled around with them. I'm friends with them. Make sure I'm not on it. So it is a responsibility, I would say, but also it's the commission's responsibility to check. So that's why that was kind of written that way. So, does that answer the question? Huh? Okay. Where's the intern? Oh, all right, buddy. Just check. Yeah. You're sleeping.
All right. Well, yes.
Yeah, doctor, if I can go back to the stitches, do you make a distinction, or is there a distinction between one of the ringside physicians versus a third doctor doing stitches, or there's no distinction in terms of liability?
Is the doctor appointed by the commission to do the stitches, or the promoter?
By the commission.
Yeah, so I think there is still some liability. Gotcha. Some promoters will bring their own cut people. We don't permit them to be sewn at the venue. We say, you want to go up to their room, do whatever you want. If not, we send them out to the hospital to get sutured. I don't want to take that responsibility, and I don't want their doctors in the back, because you don't know what the heck's going on back there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your discussion. Anybody from the panel want to say anything further? Oop. Do we have? We can't hear you up here.
He said that they're looking for a motion to adopt.
I'll explain it when we're done talking.
Yeah. Was there another question?
Hey, Dwayne, thank you. I want to go back on what Corey Schaefer said, which is a great point. So my home state of Kansas, we're a really, really small, tight MMA community and boxing community state. We've had pretty much an entire 100% turnover of our people through our current executive director and certain commissioners who have come on board in the last 5 or 6 years. Originally in Kansas, the people we had refereeing and judging our fights, it was almost like they didn't even watch fights except when they were refereeing or judging. They were completely isolated from the fight community. The turnover we've had a rapidly, remarkably improved group of officials, inspectors, timekeepers, referees. This is boxing, kickboxing, and MMA. We pull from within the community. And what Corey was saying, I think, is correct, and it applies to Kansas. It's incumbent upon them to come to Adam Rohrbach, our executive director, or to come to me as a commissioner, say I might have a conflict of interest. All right, we have 4 MMA refs in Kansas, 2 of whom are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts who teach. Our best judge in MMA is my 14-year-old daughter's Muay Thai coach, teaches pro fighters. Our number 2 boxing referee is the USA boxing rep in Kansas. They declare conflict of interest. If we don't have that, we get people who literally are coming in off the couch. In some cases, they weren't even fans. The level that we've had in the last few years, we've had Bellator, we had our first UFC, we had our first world title fight ever in boxing in Kansas 14 months ago. We had a show box, we had an Eddie Hearn Matchroom Boxing on DAZN. We now have every Invicta show. We're getting our first LFA. We had Victory. We needed those level of officials. Under the old regime and the old philosophy, all of our people, 100% of our people would have been disqualified through what would have been perceived as conflict of interest. We choose to evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. If somebody rolled with somebody 6 years ago, we don't care. If somebody has an upcoming fight with that person, or they have an issue with that gym, or they split off from that gym, or they're actively instructing that person, then we care. And the last thing I'll caution you guys on this, and Dwayne, you'll attest to this too, bias cuts both ways. If somebody, for instance, said, oh yeah, that used to be my student, and I love that kid, and they're going to judge, don't assume that they're necessarily going to favor. Often the reverse or the inverse happens, where they think, I know they're so much better, and subconsciously they will punish that fighter because they feel that they've done better. One of our top boxing judges, his first cousin, is an active boxer. Obviously, we're never going to let them box, but we've talked to him, he said that's true. I would probably punish him because I know how good he is, and on a close round, I'm probably going to give it to his opponent, whether I want to or not. I think it's a case-by-case basis. Every commission is going to have different policies on that, but I would say don't disqualify people just because they're active in the community, because that's often where you're going to pull your best people. Eric Colon, you talked about being a great example, Mike. Thank you.
Mike, I got one more thing to say.
Mike, you get a seat for today.
I got one more thing.
One more.
Since we're on social media, I'm going to talk about this for real quick. It's because it's important. It's because Dwayne mentioned run into the scores to check your score. Guys, I've kind of beat the officials up, but I'm going to bring it back a little bit the other direction. We assign these people. Protect them. You have assigned them. They are getting hammered if they have a bad decision by every media outlet, by every group. But you put them in there, they're going to have bad nights. And I have talked with officials late at night. I know you have. It's rough. It's rough. I had a big, huge world title fight. The judge came up to me, Mr. Foster, I'm so sorry. I didn't, we were getting hammered. And I said, listen, I had your score. You sit on my side. So, if there's a problem, the judge will hear from me. But at the same time, I gave a quote to ESPN or whatever. I said, listen, I had the same score he did. So I guess all of us on that side had that same score. And I think maybe you guys need to learn how to score, something like that, The point is, your judges, your officials, it's a real tough business. And they've got a lot of critics because half these people are wanting their jobs and the other half are wanting to just beat them up because bad articles sell clicks. You'll get clicks, and it's easy to beat the officials up. That's the easiest part of the deal. Now, we can keep them off social media. That's kind of the topic. But the other part of the social media is they're getting beat up, and they're getting beat up by mainstream. Keep your officials protected.
Anybody else?
All right, go ahead.
I was going to comment on what was said over here a minute ago. I come from Idaho, and in northern Idaho and Spokane, Washington, and all of that area, there's no such thing as an official and fighters and promoters who don't know each other. They all know each other. And you're never going to have, if you define a conflict in some of the terms that I've heard defined here, you're never going to have a fight that doesn't have a conflict. I think you do have to take it on a case-by-case basis, and you have to decide whether or not it will affect the outcome. That's just the simple truth of the matter.
Yeah, I really believe information is knowledge. The more information you provide to the commissioner, the easier it is for the commissioner to make a decision on what's going to occur. Listen, these guys up here are talking about these huge fights like Dwayne Ford. Dwayne Ford started his career doing 4-round fights, right? And with that said, at Mohegan, I have Bellator and I have some big shows, but I also have smaller shows. And you can ask Brian Miner. Every single time I send an assignment out, within 2 hours, everyone responds to me saying, listen, this is what I can't do. And even the local shows, I have 4-round fights in the convention center for boxing. The boxing judges that are coming up, a guy named Tom Carasone, who now works for Andy in California. And he's an NABF guy, and his scores are great. He works for Kim. But he knows the minute you get an assignment, even if Andy or Kim ask him to work, if he has a conflict, he'll call. He'll tell him, listen, I can't do this fight. So that's very important. So what we did yesterday, or 2 days ago, we spoke about not being a fan. Now I have to thank Haskell Alexander because he is a huge, Haskell stand. He's a huge, stand up Haskell, stand up. No, Haskell helped me do this presentation. It's only 6 slides. We went over this on Saturday and Sunday with the officials in MMA and boxing. We had over 200 officials there, and I think every single one of them signed the code of conduct. Because at the end of the day, it's going to help them get an assignment. Like I was saying previously, I'd use Andy before Cowboy if everything was the same, and Andy signed it and Cowboy did not, which he probably wouldn't anyway. But with that said, I want to run through this very quickly so you guys know what we spoke to the officials. Like Francisco, a lot of your guys were here. Where are you? Well, where were you? Yeah, I didn't even, sorry. A lot of his guys were here because they're from Arizona. Very happy they did the training, but they signed this, So here we go. Not a fan, the unspoken do's and don'ts of regulators and staff. How do I do this? Lydia, no. Hey, Cowboy, how do I forward that? Does it got to be turned on?
It's definitely on.
Oh, there we go. Social. Back one, yeah. There you go. Social media. And that guy, I think this is how this all came to the forefront, is the social media aspect of it. Listen, a lot of the guys are younger than me that work for me, even though I started when I was 27. A lot of these guys, that's all they do. They love social media. My intern up here, I got to yell at him and tell him to get off the phone half the time because he's looking at YouTube and stuff. But with that said, this is the animal we have to deal with as older commissioners. As MMA and boxing regulators, it's a privilege to meet world-renowned officials, referees, judges, and promoters. Everyone can agree on that. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Taking a picture with official, referee, judges, promoters are acceptable. Now, we say that, and we're talking about B.J. Flores is going to be here. Mark Kerr is going to be here. This is the time to do that. The time to take pictures but you don't need to post them. You don't need to put them on social media and say, look what I got. Now, I say this to the younger kids. I got a couple of officials that are starting. They're 22, 23 years old, and they're just learning. And at some point, they'll be a Dwayne Ford. But at this point, if we ingrain this in their minds now, they're going to understand when they get to that level, and they're going to do a WBO fight in Japan, they know they can't do it. Cowboy. Treat everyone with the same amount of respect, showing even one person favoritism. We talked about the picture with De La Hoya and the referee. Tips the scale more times than not in your favor. It looks bad. And like Andy was saying previously, it's all about the clicks. Nowadays, it's all about who gets the most clicks. The writers get paid for clicks they get on their page and on their story. I promise I only have 6 slides. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Tweet. Think social media can be private? Think again. Any response that a regulator or staff member makes about a controversial fight or bout could put you on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or any other social media websites. For Pete's sakes. Have a guideline for all staff to follow when it comes to the events. That's what this code of conduct dowhat the board of directors is asking is to make this a document that's going to be on the website that we can use to facilitate hiring officials. The better informed each individual is about what to expect, the less chances there are for a PR nightmare to come back, promoters, regulators, or the event. No trash talking. Keep opinions to yourself. The second goes to public media, there's forever. I don't know about you guys, and even recently I had a reality show a couple weeks ago, which is, they throw 2 hours worth of grappling at me, which we don't really, we oversee it. Then they throw me 22 fights, and 10 of them or 12 of them are amateur, and the rest are pro. So you're starting at 6 p.m. and we're getting done about midnight. And it's nothing worse than me sitting there cage side and hearing officials behind me bitching about other officials. Don't do it. It doesn't sound good. And unfortunately, I'm the kind of guy that'll go up and ask them, say, if you got a problem with the official, you come to me, or you just keep your mouth shut. No one wants to hear it. Everyone is entitled to my opinion. That's supposed to be a joke, Everyone has an opinion, and everyone wants to hear that opinion. Best rule of thumb is to keep your opinions to yourself. This saves each person from having to later answer something that he or she said during the heat of the moment. Again, everyone gets upset. Think before you speak. That will do it. Thanks, guys. And we'll get that posted on the website as well.